beautiful people? LosingDrea here, and I'm coming to you today from my kitchen, and I'm going to do a fermentation instruction recipe kind of video for you all. I've been promising some of you guys, I've even asked you on one of my other videos if you wanted to have me show you the recipe for making pickled onions, and a few of you said you would really enjoy seeing that. So I have a special treat for you today from here in my kitchen. I'm going to be pickling some onions. I'm also going to be fermenting some cabbage, and I'm also going to be fermenting some radishes and some carrots. Grab yourself a beverage of your choice. I today have some keto sweet tea in my cute little trick-or-treat witch feet cauldron cup. Here on October 27th, 2020, I had no idea that the day that I would be doing a fermentation video, that it was the birthday of the man who found out about lactobacillus. And his name is Stamen Grigov, and he's a prominent Bulgarian physician and microbiologist. And he discovered Lactobacillus bulgarius bacillus. I don't know if that's like a whole mouthful and then some to say, which is the true cause for yogurts and probably a lot other fermentation foods or fermented foods that we have seen that have transpired along the years. Now, I can't tell you exactly when he founded this, but I can tell you that he was born October 27 of 1878, and he died October 27 of 1945. So it's kind of ironic to me that he died on the same day as his birthday. But you know how when you go on Google, it pops up something and tells you it's like somebody's 100 and whatever birthday or whatever the holiday may be. Day marks his birthday and the day that he died. So, yeah, just kind of a little quinky dink there for y'all. This is just a fall thing for me. A lot of people who are homesteaders, they might have their own gardens and whatnot, and they're going from whatever crops that they've grown into their winter crops. And a lot of people are into the sustainability and wanting to preserve foods and or pickle foods and or ferment foods. So, you know, if you have a lot of vegetables laying around and you don't know what to do with them and they might be going bad or you don't want them to go bad, this is a very good way that you can make a brine and keep those vegetables that will prolong their life in that brine. The way fermentation works is you put vegetables in a jar with salt. Bad bacteria cannot live in the salt, but good bacteria can. So salt kills the bad bacteria, but good bacteria can survive in the salt. The good bacteria eats the natural sugars in the vegetables and creates lactic acid. Lactic acid then preserves the food. What I'm showing you here right now, this is a 32-ounce ball jar. A bunch of different jars back here for you to see. This is one from 1908 or 1911. It's a blue glass original ball jar. It has one of these locking mechanisms on there to keep the top on. I don't believe these are for canning. They'll usually say not for canning because it's not to be heated up. Canning is a different process, guys. I don't really do canning because I don't have a canner, but there are all different methods of preserving your food. This is a larger 64-ounce wide mouth, and what I have on the top is not the typical metal lid and rings that come with the jars. They're plastic because the acid can make the lids rust, and you really don't want that. You don't want that on your fermented vegetables, and this is much easier to clean, and it's not going to rust or get corroded in any kind of way. When you do make fermentations, you really don't even need a lid like this. You can use cheesecloth, you can use a little piece of burlap or some sort of muslin or other cloth, because you want it to be able to breathe, but you don't want it to build up pressure. Pressure can build up when the lacto-fermentation process begins to happen, and it can explode and you can have yourself a fermented bomb. Now, there are other types of vessels and or glasses that you can use. This is like a juice glass. I picked this up at my local thrift store and I was really amazed to find them. I believe they're quite pricey, but this has a lid with these little clips, and you can also fuse vinegars and oils with other flavors from condiments and whatnot that you have and your spices. And this is a good thing also if you wanted to ferment in or infuse the oils. Also, jars like this that have like that cute, cool, old-fashioned ball jar. It has like the little grommet on it so that it seals it and you can lock it down. This is just a small jar. Obviously, you wouldn't get a lot in here, but I had it. I thought I'd show it to you. Here's another ball jar. This is something like if you were using jellies or jams, you can actually put it in a smaller jar, or if you were going to give some of your pickling onions to your neighbors or your friends, you can have like a little small gift that you can give them in a jar like that. And then this is something that also has a grommet in it, and it's like a crock. There are all different types of crocks, but as long as you have something, you can keep a lid on it so that you can keep out any dust or impurities while your ferments are doing their thing. That is what you will need. Now, this is from the last batch of pickled onions that I made. It literally has the mother, a lot of mother in it. If you've ever had apple cider vinegar, it always says with the mother in it. The mother is a starter. A lot of people don't realize that many of their foods that you're already eating today are fermented foods. They have gone through the process of fermentation in order for them to sour or gain that taste that might make whatever that food is that you're eating as desirable as it actually is to a lot of people. So I could use this juice in here and I could pickle other things with it, and or I could just put onions back in here if I wanted to. However, I decided not to do that. I did drink some of this and I was like blown away by the way it tastes, because you wouldn't just want to drink straight vinegar, but because this has had garlic and onions and all kinds of spices in there, it actually is very flavorful. And I also added monk fruit sweetener, like golden Lakanto has this golden classic monk fruit sweetener. To me, that's the equivalent of brown sugar, because as people who are keto or carnivore, they don't want sugar, so you're not going to want to add sugar. If you don't like adding natural sugars, you can use a little honey. Maybe you have some raw honey, or however you have your honey. You can use maple syrup and other things of that nature. Here I'm just showing you in a smaller, one of the smaller ball jars, I have pickled eggs. And I never had pickled eggs before I made these pickled eggs. I was amazed by how delicious these actually taste. And the longer they sat in the refrigerator, the more delicious they became. However, that being said, they were not as pickled as I wanted them to be. And the reason that the juice in here looks pinkish, as you saw the juice in here, this is naturally red from using red onions, while this is red because I used beet juice in my pickling brine. So there are all different ways to pickle and make things. And as I mentioned to some of my friends when I was talking about the fact that I made pickled onions in sort of an accidental way, I didn't really know as a new fermenter what it was that I was making. I was just kind of throwing things together. I had made those pickled eggs and I thought, well, what else can I pickle? And I had these onions and they were just sitting around, and I hadn't been eating onions because I found some very uncomfortable symptoms from eating onions in their raw state, and I really wasn't able to eat vegetables for the longest, which is why I'm a carnivore. That being said, my mother though is keto and she can eat a lot of vegetables and I can't. I accidentally made a couple of ferments with cabbage. I was making sauerkraut and I cut up the onions and I was doing the same thing, only with the cabbage. I just used the natural liquid that comes from the cabbage and salt. Whereas the onion, I decided to put the mixture of vinegars and sugars and whatnot like I was making my pickled eggs. and I left it on the counter for overnight because I was leaving the others on the counter, because you don't refrigerate the sauerkraut when you make it. You leave it out room temperature. Some people use like a root cellar or something. You want to keep it covered and dark. The better your ferment will end up coming out. That's what I ended up doing with the onions. And a lot of people that I've seen do pickled onions don't leave them out on the counter. Because I later thought to myself, well, this is more pickling than it is fermenting, because I added vinegar to it. So then I took it from the counter after the one whole day that it was out and put it in the refrigerator. And I gotta tell you guys, I was just amazed. Now, one of the things that I'm making for the first time is the carrots and the radishes. I have not done that yet, so you guys are gonna be my witness to how that comes out here on this video. If you wanna pickle things, you can buy stuff like kosher dill pickle spices. They sell this where they sell your ball canning jars and preserving supplies. And you can use this if you like. I have yet to use it, but I did buy it because I was kind of interested in it, but I do not have any cucumbers because I bought pickling cucumbers to also go through this with you guys. However, the pickling cucumbers went bad really quick. And that's another thing. You probably have some vegetables on your counter, or you buy vegetables in a large amount and you don't have enough things that you need all those vegetables for. This is a good way to preserve them as well. Other brown sugars, I'm going to use my Lakanto Classic monk fruit sweetener for my sweetener. You can use brown sugar. You can use Truvia makes a brown sugar blend. Keep in mind, this is a blend. It is blended with real brown sugar. So this is something, it's never been opened. It was an accident that I bought it because I later read it and saw that it is not keto. It does have 2 grams of carbs in it, and it is a natural, sugar with molasses in it. So you definitely, unless you don't care about the keto carnivore part, you don't want that. And there's also Swerve makes a brown sugar also. So there's different options. Also, a lot of people who make pickling, brine, and pickle things will usually boil the concoction or the brine in a pot first to let all of the flavors of the spices work its way in there. But if you don't want to strain it out later, you can make a little pouch with cheesecloth. That you can buy this. I bought this in Walmart, and then you can keep a little like magic pouch of all of your seasonings in the brine, and then just pull it out when you're done, and then just use the juice. So those are all options for you. You can also buy mixed pickling spice, also in the same department that I found the dill pickle spice and the ball jars. You can get this, and this is very good. I have some already out here in a little jar for myself. There are fancy pickling spices that you can buy in the big container. I try to buy my spices organic, however this is not. So I'm not going to use it. I'm keeping it here. It also has red pepper flakes in it, as where this mixture does not. And I'm not a big fan of spice. Sorry guys for those of you who like spice. But there's that. We're going to have our apple cider vinegar. We have regular distilled vinegar, red wine vinegar, sea salt. This is Redmond's. Everybody's been raving about this, so I actually held off on doing this video until this came. I ordered it from Amazon. It was like $10 and change, and it does taste amazing. But any kind of pink Himalayan salt or sea salt should work just fine. We're not going to use any honey. I just wanted to have that out. This is just a container of what that fancy pickling spice came in, just to give you an idea of what to look for if you are looking for pickling spice and you don't find it in the canning aisle of your store. So I'm just going to put a lot of this stuff to the side so that you can see what I'm doing here. This already is 3/4 of a cup of my apple cider vinegar. So I'm just going to put this over here to the side. I saved some of the outer leaves that have come off of the cabbage because I'm going to immerse the pickle, immerse the cabbage in underneath the liquid, as long as there is no air between the vegetables and the top of the inside of your jar, and everything is immersed within the salt water. There will not be any kind of molding or contamination that can get anybody sick or give anybody botulism. I'm pretty sure if any of you have ever heard of the word botulism and wondered where it came from. I have some whole cloves of garlic, which we're going to smash up and add to our ferments. Now, I like to keep things crunchy, so I don't heat my brine up in a pan. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do fermented cabbage. So I have a food processor here with my slicing blade inside. If you don't have a food processor, that's quite all right. Just get you a nice sharp knife. And me personally, I remove the core as best I can, and I cut my cabbage down the center. And this way I can use the flat part of the cabbage down and then start slicing whichever way. I don't think there's a good or a bad way, but I'm actually going to put all this in my food processor. So I'm going to cut this into quarters and then cut each quarter in half so that I can fit this down into the mouth of my food processor. So like I said, you don't need a food processor. You just want to slice your cabbage or your kraut however way that you feel you like it. I like mine pretty thin, and that's why I'm using my processor. Definitely see how having a food processor like this makes quick work of shredding the cabbage. You want to squeeze your cabbage because you're basically letting all the water out of it. So for this much cabbage, I'm probably going to put a couple of tablespoons of the Redmond salt. We're going to sprinkle the salt, the sea salt, all over the cabbage. And that's kind of about, I want to say, 1/8 of a cup right now. It's going to help bring the moisture out from the vegetables. But remember, when you're making the brine, it's also going to keep out the bad bacteria, since bad bacteria cannot survive in the salty environment. Now, I made a batch of this and I dumped it because it was too salty, so I'm being careful right now, learn from my mistake, to not add too much salt to it. Even though salt's good for you guys, if you're carnivore or if you're keto, salt's very good for you. I know a lot of you are wondering, as a carnivore, why do I care to make vegetables? Well, I mentioned that my mother is keto, and I have other family members who are keto that I sometimes go to their house and I have parties with and whatnot and entertain, and they can eat it. But what I found out by the process of fermentation with the good microbiome, that this is a living food, and the good microbiome eat a lot of the carbs and the natural sugars in the vegetables. So I'm not really consuming as many as you think. Now, if you do net carbs, where you subtract the fiber, and they suggest you only do that with vegetables, then you're not really consuming as many carbs to begin with. However, the fermentation process breaks down those natural sugars and carbs, so it's a lot less. And it's obviously been proved by me that that's true, because I cannot eat raw cabbage, I cannot eat coleslaw without having bloating and upset stomach and gas. However, when I ferment it, I can eat it, and I do not have any upset stomach, gas, or any of those bad symptoms that none of us like. So as you can see, what was a heck of a lot more cabbage when I first cut it is much, much less, because I broke down by squeezing it and squeezing it until it's got a lot of juice. And we want this juice. We don't necessarily have to add anything to this if we don't want to. I made some once and I did put vinegar in it. It just kind of depends on your taste, what you like. But the easiest way to get into fermenting is by just trying to make some sauerkraut with the cabbage, because you just need some salt, some cabbage, and some strong hands. You can get the kids doing this if you got kids. They sell pounders, but I don't own one. This is a wooden rolling pin, and I have, unfortunately, or had the unfortunate mishap of the handle falling off. And other than the hole in the side, this makes for a really good pounder. So I can pound cabbage like that. And see, it fills up in the little hole there. No biggie. Now, I'm ready for this to go into the jar. And I'm going to use this big wide mouth 64 ounce. This size. I'm going to fill my jar up with the cabbage. I have one of these. This also was bought in the same aisle with the canning stuff. It's convenient. I just kind of drop it down in there. I find if I put it in there, it just sits and it doesn't go anywhere. And then I have to sit there and play with it. So if I just kind of hold the cabbage over it and drop it in, it just kind of falls down in there. And you'll see how this will fill up the whole entire jar. This is why I'm choosing this size jar. If you wanted to make smaller pint-sized jars, you could. They have them in 12, 16, and 32 ounce sizes. It just depends on your needs. Are you giving them for gifts? Are you keeping it for your household? Do you have room in your refrigerator? That kind of thing. All things to consider, as I have, as I'm a new fermenter, just starting out. And I'm just going to pour all of this juice back in there. Now my hands are clean. I guess I don't have to tell you guys to make sure to clean your hands and keep your hands clean. I mean, this is your food. This is my food. It's only me and my mother, and we pick at each other's food all the time. But obviously, you know, you want to be really clean. So as you see, it did not fill the jar up all the way, but that's okay. As long as I get this where I have some liquid in it, and the liquid is covering the vegetables in the salt. And it's going to mash down even more. You'll see. Now you can add spices to this if you wish. You can add garlic, you can add onions. I know the first time I made it, I added onions and vinegar and all kinds of things to it. But this should not need any of that. At this moment, this is just gonna sit in there. You can see all the juice. I don't know if you can see that as I'm tamping it down with my hands. But I don't need to add anything to this. I don't need to add any water to it or anything. Now I have these very nifty fermentation weights. I bought these on Amazon. I'll leave a link down below so you guys can find them. And what these are, they have this cute little, I already washed them and put them back in here for anybody who needs to know, because you always want to wash stuff when you get it. This fits directly down into the jar, and it's really just going to put weight down on top of your ferment so that it keeps it under the juice. I did, like I said before, I saved some of the outer leaves of the cabbage because I'm using this as a cap. You can throw this away after. It doesn't need to become part of your ferment. So it doesn't matter if they're just like a little wilted. But I'm just gonna put that down in there, making sure all the way around, because anything that's not down in that juice could get moldy, and you really don't want to deal with that. Now, some mold will not hurt you. There could be like a white film that some people have experienced developing on their ferments. And they clean it off and it's okay, and you know, it won't hurt them. However, I see that and I won't eat it personally. That's just me. So I'm putting this weight down in there. It's a little bigger of a jar than I actually would need, but it's keeping everything down under the juice, if you can see that. And that's what we want. We want this juice, we want it all underneath the juice. I can put a piece of cloth over this or something that keeps the bugs and the dirt out of it. That's what happens when you're a little OCD. And I just put the lid on it, but I burp it a couple of times a day. Since I'm always in my kitchen throughout the day, for one reason or another, it's no problem for me to just go over and open it up and release some of the gases that are produced during the fermentation process. Now the next thing I'm going to make is I'm going to slice up some carrots. I'm going to cut them in half. And then I'm going to cut them into like sticks. You can cut them in quarters, you can cut them a little smaller than that if you like. Some people cut them into little coins. Yeah. A lot of keto people, they don't eat carrots because they're high in natural sugars. So try not to eat them, but I do like them. I love vegetables. If you look back at my channel, you can see that I love vegetables. I used to be a vegan. I did the vegan, vegetarian. I did it all here on my channel. One cool thing about this guy, Stamen Grigov, is he had gotten an award for bravery. And I guess it was because they felt it was really brave of him to even attempt to eat something that others thought would give you botulism, which could kill you. Get you very, very, very sick, apparently. And this is how he was able to create lactobacillus, Bulgarius bacillus, was going to be the fermentation process for yogurt. Now, I'm not going to use this lid. I'm going to use a plastic lid because, like I said, the metal lids can get icky. So now I'm just going to pack these carrots down into this jar. Now, jars are sterilized. And I think this is just enough. So you can make this in a jar the same size, because if you filled half this jar up with the brine that you need to fill this jar, you would need half of this fill. So I'm going to show you really quick. This is about 3/4 of a cup of apple cider vinegar. And this is 2 cups of distilled water. Do not use chlorinated water. If you have tap water and you are on city water, chances are your water has chlorine in it. You do not want that water. It will kill the bacteria and the fermentation process. So I put 2 cups of water to 3/4 cup of the apple cider vinegar. I'm going to crush a couple of these cloves of garlic. Just kind of release the garlickiness in them, and I'm going to put that down in there. I've got the tablespoon of pickling spice. I have some cinnamon and dill. Pickling spice generally has it, but it wouldn't hurt to put some down in there. And a little bit more of my Redmond salt. I'm going to add a little bit of my Lactobacillus sweetener. And like I said, if you're not keto or carnivore and you're watching my channel, you're free to use whatever sweetener you like. Like I said, you can use honey, you can use regular white sugar, you can use cane sugar, you can use brown sugar. I suggest brown sugar as it was suggested to me, and that's what I was using, and that's why I attempted to use this in place of, since I was making it for people who are keto. And so I'm gonna put 1 tablespoon of sugar, and I'm putting it directly to the brine. I should have done that with the salt and the other spices as well, but I'm new at this. And I'm just going to give this a little bit of a shake. Yeah, that's one thing. You always want to, it's making a nice bubbling sound. You always want to make sure that you clean off the rims of your jars, because you will not be getting a good seal if you're trying to do this, and stuff will go all over the place. But I think it's all in there pretty good. I don't know if you guys, the bubbling is just out of this world. And here we go. I'm putting it all down in there. See? Very little bit left. I'll use that in my other stuff. And I'm just going to put the lid on and give it a good shake. Okay. And that's it. And now I'm going to do radishes. And I have radishes that I've washed and cleaned really well, and I cut off the roots and any of the icky parts, because some of them, you know, they're a root vegetable and they grow in dirt, and you don't want dirt in your ferments. So I'm just going to add these to my food processor and get them sliced up as best I can. Probably all fit in here, I guess. I've never made these, honestly. Anyways, just to give you an idea, the majority of them are nice little coin-size slices. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this juice. I'm just going to keep that in there because it's not a whole lot. I'm going to salt I'm going to use not even a tablespoon. It's like a half a tablespoon of salt. And again, we need that to kill the bad bacteria. And I'm just going to toss this around in here. And then I'm going to put it down in my jar. And this is how easy this is, guys. I mean, you didn't really see me go through what I went through with the cabbage as far as like squeezing all the water out, but this is a naturally juicy or naturally water-filled vegetable. You're not going to want to ferment all kinds of vegetables. There are certain vegetables that are just not going to work correctly for you, and you're going to have a problem. They're going to get mushy in the fermenting process. So I'm using my hand and my knuckles, and I'm doing the same thing that I did basically with the cabbage, and I'm pushing them down, and they're so it's all good. And of course, there was some stuff in there as it was. I'm going to add some more water, and this I'm just doing blindly, just to show you how easy this is, guys. You don't need a lot of stuff. I'm going to put some red wine vinegar because I'm going to give it that nice red wine flavor, but that color. And I'm just putting it in there. And this is how I made these pickles, guys. I did not really use like a recipe for it. I just started putting stuff together. Now I shake this up whenever I use apple cider vinegar, aka ACV. And I put some of that. And I'm not going to use distilled vinegar in this one. I am going to use about a tablespoon, a little less than a tablespoon, of the monk fruit, classic monk fruit, golden monk fruit sweetener. I'm going to take a couple of cloves of garlic. I'm sorry if I'm cooking. You know, the best chefs are messy chefs. If you didn't know that. And I'm crushing my cloves, maybe 3 or 4 of them. I like a lot of garlic. If you don't like garlic, you don't have to use it. Don't need to put it in there if you don't like it. But if you like something or certain flavors, dill, coriander, any kind of woodsy spices, go for it. I'm going to put a little bit more of that cinnamony dill seasoning that I have. I'm going to put that down in there. Clean off my lid. Because like I said, if you don't clean it up, it won't seal when you go to shake it, and you'll have a mess. And just get it in there really good. That's it. Now what I did was I shook it up, and so now everything is kind of floating to the top. So I'm going to take one of my weights, and I'm going to take, and you can use the cabbage leaf to hold down the stuff in your ferment, because we're not going to eat that. You just want to use it to hold everything in there, keep it down. And so that's what I'm doing. There goes the weight and all the juices to the top. And I'm going to close it just kind of lightly. I don't want to create that bomb, remember. Okay, so now we're ready to make the pickled onions, what you guys have really come here for. Well, some of you, because that's what I teased you with. I was eating them, losing weight, and enjoying veggies for a change due to the fact that I have not been able to enjoy vegetables because of the fact that, well, they weren't making me feel very good. Okay, so for the pickled onions, you're going to need red onions, 2 cups of water, and make sure that it is not tap water that is chlorinated. You want it to be either distilled water, or I have well water, but I do buy bottled water, and that's what I'm using today. And I have 1 cup of apple cider vinegar, and I have a few big cloves and a few little meager cloves. So I'm going to crush the cloves of garlic. You don't have to use garlic if you don't like. There's no rhyme or reason to how you make your pickled onions, but this is how I make mine. So I'm just going to crush these. And you can chop them however you like. I just want to smash them, get a little bit of that garlic juice in there. And so I'm just going to put that aside. You don't need salt in this. You can use a little bit if you want. I do have some of the Redmonds here I will be using. I have some pickling spices. I have, again, the cinnamon and dill mix, which I'm just going to add just a little bit to get rid of it. And I have my garlic, and I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of the Lakanto golden sweetener to sweeten my onions. You don't have to use sugar at all. Again, it's all depending on your flavor preferences. So, keto sweet tea. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to slice my onions, and I'm going to cut them in half so that they fit in my food processor. If you don't have a food processor, you can slice them by hand. By all means, I'm trying to avoid crying on film for you guys. There's been enough of that going around with me lately. Don't need to do it here. So I'm just going to slice up my onions first, and then we will show you the quick process. Okay, so I'm going to use a large jar for this. You can use smaller jars if you want to give them as gifts. They are kind of pungent. I might end up crying anyways. Now some people will cook their brine. I like my onions really crunchy. If you don't, you can run hot water over them, put them in a hot water bath. I didn't do anything with the onions that I made before, and they were absolutely delicious. And like I said, it was an accident because I didn't really know what I was doing. I was trying to ferment some other vegetables, and they were just sitting here, and I needed to make them because I don't generally eat onions, and I bought it for some reason or another for a recipe, but I asked somebody to bring them to me. I wanted 1 onion. They ended up bringing me a whole bunch of onions, and so that's why I had so many of them, and I was like, well, what do I do with them? They're going to go bad. And I don't know, when you guys, when you leave an onion out for a while and it rots, besides the things that it brings to it, it's very stinky, and it'll smell up your house. So I basically was doing the same thing that I do to ferment my cabbage. So, okay, so I got all my onions in the jar. And hopefully this will be enough liquid to cover it. I think it will. So I'm going to put my whole cup of apple cider vinegar into my 2 cups of water. And I put my garlic in there with the onions. I know, garlic and onions. Trust me, guys, it works. And I'm just going to put like a big pinch of salt, maybe 2 big pinches of salt. I don't remember how much of salt I put into the last one. I'm going to put about, I think it was more like 1/4 cup of the monk fruit sweetener. But I'm going to put 2 tablespoons. So we'll see. 2 tablespoons, maybe, here, I'll put 3 heaping tablespoons of monk fruit sweetener. Why not? And all of the pickling spice and dill and cinnamon. And I'm just going to, you can heat this up if you wanted to kind of help the sugars and whatnot. I didn't do any of that. I just like I'm doing it now. Sounds like a bubbling cauldron of goodness. There we go. I'm gonna keep my hand in there. sure that it's floating underneath. Now this is just in the beginning. Fermentation stops processing when you refrigerate. So the fact that, you know, I was like, well, this is kind of more of a pickling process, and I decided after I had it out for the whole night that I was then going to put it in the refrigerator. And usually it takes about 24 hours, so I've heard from people who make pickled onions that they're ready to eat within 24 hours if you really want them good, but you can actually eat them right now just as they are. It's kind of like adding vinegar to, if you've ever had vinegar and onions with cucumbers. But these will last, if they do, a good couple of weeks, maybe longer. And this is really all you have to do. And I left it out with my other ferments overnight, which I'm going to do, just like I did before. And then after tomorrow sometime in the evening, I'll go ahead and I'll put it in my refrigerator. The juice will be more red like this, but like I said, it has the mother in there. A lot of ferments, the mother is like a starter. So for a lot of people, they don't really understand what fermented foods are. And if you've ever had sourdough bread or salami or yogurt or even chocolate, there is a fermenting process that takes place within the cocoa beans of your chocolate that might be rather disgusting if you ever look up the process of how chocolate is made, if you think you cannot eat things that are fermented. There are many cheeses that are fermented. There are other vegetables. There is something called jardiniere, a myriad of different vegetables. It's quite beautiful looking in a jar that you can also ferment or pickle. And the reason I don't like to heat any of my brine up is I don't want to kill any of the lactobacillus, the good bacteria that is gonna ferment the food and give it that nice sour taste that I like. And I also don't want to take away any of the crunch. Use fresh like bay leaves in the plant form, your herbs and fresh, that you will add tannins, which will help keep or preserve the crunch of the vegetables. I don't know that that's true. I've kind of heard it from a couple of people, but I don't know that I can listen to what they say. But yeah, this is how I make it. And this stuff is, I don't want to drink it. Should I drink it on camera? It would make a wonderful salad dressing. It is not that tart. It is not that vinegary. It goes down easy. If you like or you do drink apple cider vinegar because of the health benefits that it has for your gut bio, this is a delicious way to get your apple cider vinegar down. It is cut with water and other spices and flavors, and of course the Lakanto monk fruit sweetener that I choose to use. You can choose whatever sweetener you want or no sweetener at all. If you do make any of these ferments yourself and try any of my recipes, I would love to hear about it down below in the comments. Thanks for joining me in my kitchen. Usually I'm doing mukbangs where I'm eating or I'm talking about the fact that I don't want to eat, but I eat too much. So, doing good on my weight loss efforts this time around. The holidays are coming, so I hope I can stick to my guns. And with that said, be happy, be healthy, be beautiful, but just be you, be the boss of your loss if you're on a weight loss journey. And I'll definitely be seeing each and every one of you guys in the next one. Bye guys, be blessed. Mwah. Hey guys, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you haven't already subscribed, please click the subscribe button down below and be sure to ring the bell so you can be notified of all new videos as I put them out to you, as well as if I go live.